So thank you everyone for coming to the PatternFly demo. One slight change to this demo is that we previously were just featuring next PatternFly items that were in our Scrum team, but now we've folded in everything that's going on with PatternFly. So this includes some PatternFly 3 work. This just allows us to be more efficient with our demos, but also it made sense for the community to be privy to the work that was going on with PatternFly 3, in addition to what was going on with the newer stuff. And so I put in the chat the agenda. It was botched formatting for the first chat, and so I redid that. And so there's agenda link. As usual, we have a survey link, so feel free to open that up and provide feedback along the way, or you can always add your feedback to the survey after the fact. So we'll just dive in and get started. Our first items for PF4 are visuals, and this is Kyle and Adam worked on icons. I'll hand it over to you guys.
All right, thanks, Leslie. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's take a look. So this was pretty easy today. So basically what we're doing is we're going to upgrade from Font Awesome 4.7 to Font Awesome 5. And with Font Awesome 5, there's a few changes. The one, they made the icons a little bit heavier. They work a little bit different because they're now rendering as SVGs, and also just a little bit of styling change. So right now we have our that Font Awesome 4.7 plus our custom PatternFly icon library, the ones that we generate. So we have 3 columns here. One is this is the new Font Awesome 5 icon. So this is a straight just conversion, uses the same name. This will just happen automatically with PatternFly Next. The next column is our old PatternFly icons that no longer, either there was issues with them or they're just not following the new styling. Those have a direct replacement in Font Awesome 5. So that represents this column, which is a good portion of them. And then there are several, this whole right-hand column are icons that are not going to be updated just because of bandwidth right now, but eventually we'll update them to follow the new styling, be a little bit bolder, a little bit larger, easier to see. So that's really it for the styling. Adam, do you want to talk about the development portion?
Sure. As Kyle said, I don't have anything to share, but as Kyle said, the new icons will be SVGs. So everything when you're writing them or developing with them, it's the same methodology they used before. There's currently a PR in for PatternFly Next to put a demo page in there. They changed the preface that you use a little bit. So since we're using solids, you actually say FAS instead of FA before. And everything aligns and sizes properly and coordinates the way it should. And with our development package, though, we're packaging them. We're only packaging the icons that Kyle showed in that list. We're not packaging all of Font Awesome 5. So we're actually shrinking the size of the package that we have. But we are giving the users the ability to add all of the Font Awesome 5 icons if they want, with a simple flag. So if they want to build PatternFly Next themselves, you can just change one of the defaults from false to true, and they'll get all of Font Awesome 5, not just the icons that we specified. So it makes it easier for people who just want to get up and running. They'll have a nice smaller package size for everything, but we're still giving users the ability to take everything if they want. And if they do decide to take everything, nothing changes in terms of how they use it. They can still follow our documentation and everything that we have, and then just use it as they want. So it's a lot simpler than before, and it's pretty streamlined. That's it.
All right. Any questions on icons? All right, next up is Michael talking about the background image treatment system.
Yep. So I'm gonna do something a little different and do a demo in Photoshop. So this is gonna be so basically what I have here is a reconstructed header area because it's kind of the most prominent area where background image treatment system is used. So I'm going to take you through how it was, and then I'm going to show you how the new way works. So basically, we have a series of layers. We have our image itself. We have a grayscale SVG filter. We have the header overlay, and then the top left overlay, and then the content sits on top of all that. So what I want to hit on here is this header overlay right here. Essentially, the way that we found this header overlay is we did this, where we kind of took just straight white, and we found the value, which is essentially these overlays are just transparent black layers, and we found the color in which our secondary text color would still be accessible when sitting on top of it. And the theory is that when you put that over an image is never going to have anything brighter than white, right? And because white is the brightest it could possibly be, so it'll always be accessible. And this is great, and it works fine, but we actually found a better way of doing it. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate this to show a little side by side, name that new. So essentially the kind of, I guess secret, it's not really a secret, but the kind of key aspect of this new thing happens here at the SVG filter level. And instead of a grayscale SVG filter, we're using a gradient map. So essentially what was happening before with the grayscale is that essentially the image was being desaturated. But you can kind of think of it like this, where we've got this gradient map from black to white. And what this is saying is map the darkest parts of this image to this color and the brightest to this color. And what the gradient map SVG filter gives us the power to do is actually manipulate these colors. And so what we can do is, if you remember the gray value that we found before for our header overlay, we can take the hex value that translates to and change this bright value and say that the bright colors in the image can never be brighter than this hex value, which is based on that accessibility. And so at the SVG filter level, what we've done now is we've darkened that white up into our text accessible gray. And we've replicated the exact same effect. You can see it's the exact same thing, but without the header overlay. So now we just need one level of overlay, which is the top level overlay. We can get rid of the header overlay. And we have a simpler system, and we also have one with way more control and flexibility. So for example, we were running into issues where you'd get a little too dark over here in some images. And Kyle and I actually talked about that and decided that it was a non-issue because we actually liked the way that it looked. But if for whatever reason we want to change that, we could also alter the other side of this, the dark side, and brighten it up a little bit if we wanted to. So just setting ourselves up for this amount of control over the background image treatment system is exactly what we want, and it's a simpler system with a lot more control. So that's pretty much it, and it achieves the same effect, and it's all directly translatable to the front end technologies that we're using. So that's it.
Nice. That was cool to see. So thanks for stepping us through that.
Sure thing.
Next up, we have SJ with. Well, let me check the chat really quick. Okay, great demo. SJ with Tooltip.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. I'll share my screen. All right. So I worked on the visuals for the Tooltip component for PatternFly 4, and we have two variations. So traditionally, I'll zoom in. So the Tooltip currently in PatternFly is just on the left, so it's just triggered on hover, and then we decided to take a step further and have another variation, which is similar to the popover that we have now. So you have the option to use a larger tooltip that's triggered on click, so you can have more text, header if you will, and links can be used. And we are using the same spacers that are used for the Modal and Shadow 2 and typographies listed on the side. So it's pretty straightforward. But are there any questions?
Hey, SJ, just one quick comment or question. I think visually this looks great. My only feedback is it seems like we're confusing tooltips and pop-ups here. So the thing with the close button and the link in it, really, I think that's more what we're calling a pop-up, or we've called a pop-up in the past. So I think the designs are valid. I just wanted to note that I think these are two different components, really.
Yeah, Matt, Carleton, Kyle, and I were discussing that yesterday, and I think where we landed was we would still separate them into the tooltip and popover, but Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we definitely want to do that. But just like with we talked about with the alerts, the inline alert and the toast notification, and then the notification drawer, if we can align the designs to share some of the same elements to be more modular, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, as I said, I think the designs here are great. Just note that the interactions need to be different on these two elements. So they, I think, from a coding point, from a JavaScript point of view, need to be treated differently.
So should I just update this
Maybe
to clarify that the left is tooltip
or something like that. So it's.
So SJ, what I can do is there's a popover issue, and so I can just send that to you, and so you can just put the images in the appropriate issue. So one for popover and one for tooltip. I can pull that popover up since we're making good progress with the visuals. Definitely nice to see some consistency with these two things because I know that was an issue with current PatternFly.
I guess the only other question or comment, would we have the ability to have the arrow? I assume that can be on the bottom or on the right, or
yes,
that's flexible, right?
I did make a note in the issue when implementing, just make sure there's on left, right, top, bottom.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, good clarification. Any other questions about visuals? If not, we're going to move on to the CSS portion. Andrés is going to kick us off with themes.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. So one thing we do have on PatternFly 4 is two areas where we have a dark background. So actually they're free, the header, the top portion of the dashboard, and the about modal. And the idea is, since we are creating this modular approach to PatternFly Next or PatternFly 4, then any component can live within that section, and it should take a theme which is the inverted colors of what it is. So I can show you probably after, if anyone is interested, about how it works under the hood. But basically, whatever you put inside this area will change to be the invert color. So if you have text, it will be white, for example. If you have a button, it will be the invert color of the button. Some components, they don't change. For example, an alert will not change, so the alert will stay white, and whatever you put inside will not take the invert color of it. But basically, we want to make the user experience to be good for the developer. So if they put whatever inside that area, it will just take whatever invert version of the component it should take. The next, I think, two items I have to show, they are from Matt Nolting. I know if he could make it or not, but I don't think so, right? He's not here, so let me do it for him. So he worked on the forms. This is like the first implementation of forms. It needs some adjustment, but we define all the forms layout, so how the fields with the label work together with different helpers and things like form groups with tooltips, for example, different states and different types of controls. And then we put them together into a demo. So this is a simple form demo where it's using the grid layout forms together to display this kind of like 2-column form. I think that's it. Is there any question?
Thanks, Andres.
No problem.
And thanks for covering Matt's work too. So we can skip down to the background overlay system, Matt Carleton, and you have a number of things on your list as well.
Yeah, so screen. The first one is the background image filter that Michael had talked about. I can't do any justice to the presentation he just did, so I'll just quickly go through this. Basically, if you go on now, you can see there's a background image in our components. If you click on that full page mode, you're going to see the example of it, and you can see the SVG filter loading over top of that. So it's basically just what Michael had explained. So we have our image in the background and the filter being pulled in over top of that. There's still lots to talk about with our background image stuff. This is more just about getting that filter to work and having it available for when we start working on page layout. So there's currently an issue open with the different things that I could think of that we need to still consider for background images, and I've been talking to the designers about that too. So feel free to check that out if you have any questions. The next thing I worked on was finishing up the alerts. So this is more about accessibility stuff for the alerts, so just extending our accessibility kind of consideration for alerts. So if you take a look at the HTML, you can see the different ARIA stuff that we've included there, screen reader consideration. And the last thing was a new layout. So we now have an alignment layout, so you can align things to the left, to the center, and to the right. So this potentially could change as well. We could be aligning things to the top or the bottom, but this is more just for what we need currently for building out things like card footers and things like that. And that is it. Any questions? Cool, thanks.
All right, next up we have Sarah with Backdrop and Basic Modal.
The first one is the backdrop. This is done as a precursor to it. It'll be needed for the modal, which I'll show you in a minute. Not to steal Dana's thunder, but this actually uses the full page preview, and it's quite exciting. You'll see it looks like a gray box. This is actually using the backdrop filter CSS property and you're putting a blur on what's underneath it. For now, only WebKit and with a prefix and Chrome under a flag support it, but it's there, and when the browsers support it, then you'll see it. In the meantime, anything that's under there is just grayed out, and there's nothing under there in the demo, so you won't see it. But so that's everything for that. As I said, that was done in support of the modal, which is my next item. Just the basic modal is composed of a header, a body, and a footer with the background shadow behind it. That's in the component modal box. But then I've actually done a demo for the modal. And again, we'll preview that in the full page mode. And so there are a couple of versions of it. This is just the basic modal showing a title, some content, and then some buttons in the footer. There's another version, another demo that I did, just showing enough content that it will scroll, because this was sort of an issue how we were going to handle that, and the decision ended up being that the content area will scroll. So if the page gets, oh, my screen isn't quite big enough. If it gets big enough, it obviously won't scroll. If the modal is small enough that there is scrolling, then you can see that this content area gets a scroll bar and will scroll. The modal box maintains some padding around it. It maintains padding around the edges. I think that's about it. There's just one other version of it, which is one that's double wide, and you won't actually see any difference here because there's not enough content in there. Eventually, I think the demo will probably show a form or something in there to demonstrate that. Basically, it's just got some different sizing on the mins and maxes to handle it, taking twice as much space, twice as much width as the other version of the modal. That's it, if there are any questions.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Next up, we have some work with buttons that both Michael Coker and Matt Nolting worked on. Michael Coker, do you want to kick us off here?
Sure. Let me share my screen. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, basically we just refactored the way that borders are drawn on the buttons. A border was affecting the sizing of the element in a way that didn't match the UI specs. So we changed the border from an actual CSS border to a inner shadow. And that was basically the extent of that change. There's a border that's drawn and then changed in size when you hover over buttons that have an existing border, or you apply a focus or active state to those buttons.
And Michael, if you leave that screen up, I just also want to point out that the link button and the ghost button have also been added. So Matt Nolting did that. That was also mentioned in last demo if we were considering a link button. So that addition has been made as well.
And then I also worked on the badge component. This is pretty simple. Michael Celedonia gave me the designs for it. It has two states, red and unread. Unread is just a gray background, subtle gray background with dark text. Then a few different presentation modes in the demo. And unread is a blue background with white text to indicate some sort of a new badge number. That's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple component.
Any questions with that one? All right, thanks, Michael. Next up, we have Matt Carrano with the component design page template.
Yeah, so this should be very quick. But let me share my screen out. Okay, so we have created a template for design documents that will accompany each component or demo, and this has been done as a blueprint. So when a new component or demo is created in the repo, this template will automatically get created and placed in a docs directory. So the docs directory will have a code.md, which is the developer documentation, and the design.md, which is the design documentation. And this is just a template I worked on with Stacy McAuliffe a few weeks back. And component name usage, we really want to focus on providing designers with some guidance on how a particular component should be used, any behavioral spec styling, and content guidelines that may be relevant to the particular component. So a very simple sort of one-page document to reflect design, which we feel like this simplifies the documentation from what we have on the site now, where we have things split over 2 pages. I think that's about it. Any questions about this? Okay, if not, back to you, Leslie.
All right, thanks, Matt. All right, before moving on to PatternFly 3, we have one quick announcement. Dana, did you want to take this one? Or wait, no. We have, and then we have the workspace stuff. Sorry, so if you want to cover both of them.
Everybody already demoed my workspace stuff. I don't have any, but just one. So as you're using PF Next, you'll notice that there's some things that we're adding to help developers of PatternFly. So what Andrés showed with being able to show the theme in there as well as pop into a new window. There's also a modifiers link, but it kind of is just an aside to that it's becoming clear that there's really people that are developing for PatternFly and then consumers of PatternFly, and the experience on the site right now. As we move forward with documentation and thinking about that, I think we're gonna, you really want to learn from this process of what it's like to develop for PatternFly and make sure that we're not conflating in the documentation those two things. And sometimes that happens with these frameworks and these libraries. So that's been a useful exercise. But and then if you have any feedback on the workspace, let us know, because we can keep adding things to help make it easier to develop in there. And then we want to talk about the name, Leslie. All right.
Yep.
So we're gonna drop next, and hopefully everyone. I'm excited about it because it's kind of like an albatross, something that's been hanging around our neck. So we're going to call this PatternFly 4 moving forward. There may be some library and packaging name challenges with that, but coming up with a consistent name so that people understand that PatternFly 4 and forward is the new, not based on Bootstrap thing that's being developed, and PatternFly 3 and below is the former library that'll probably live for a while and be supported, but they'll just make a clear distinction. And we're going to slowly move away from the PatternFly Next repo and back into PatternFly, fix our packaging so that it's clear that you're either on 3 or 4, and that should also carry through to the PF React repo where it's clear whether or not you're building on PatternFly 3 or PatternFly 4 moving forward. So hopefully that will kind of make it a lot easier to understand what we're talking about, and then we don't have to live with this next name for the rest of our lives. So.
That makes sense, right? It's a breaking change, to say the least.
it's breaking, all right. Yep. So
I imagine some migration guides.
Oh yeah. There's going to need to be a lot of documentation.
Help really illustrate that this is a big change.
Yep. All right. And I don't even want to look at the chat.
It's not even about the name, so you're good there. All right, thanks, Dana. Next up, PatternFly 3. We'll wrap up with that. Amy?
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So I just have some pretty quick updates for PatternFly org. So all of the React example links on the site for Storybook were broken after a recent change made in the PatternFly React repo. So I went in and updated all of the links on the site. I also added the React Storybook links for bullet chart and masthead that were recently merged as well. And those are just kind of my quick updates for org. Lately, I've been working with Patrick to completely revamp the PatternFly React demo app. And as of now, we're starting with introducing the vertical nav to the app, but we're still working through some of the kinks, so this is still a work in progress. But we plan to continue adding more components to the app, including the masthead, list view, which I believe Dave Taylor's contributing, and the notification drawer, and others. But yeah, this is currently what we have so far, but we plan to have more coming soon. And that's it for me. Any questions?
Doesn't sound like it. Thanks, Amy. Is there anything else that we need to discuss in this meeting? Any other topics? If not, we'll see you next time. I will send out a recording of this out to y'all. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
You guys.
Bye.